And the first conferee and opening up, we're going to allow about 30 minutes for the proponents and then some questions, and about 30 minutes for the opponents. And in that time period, a couple of things I was going to ask is that don't read your testimony. Give us the basically the nucleus of what your testimony is. If someone's already given what your testimony is, affirm their testimony. We're not asking anyone to not give full testimony. We need to also move a little quickly so we use our time. And first conferee is Representative Blake Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome to the committee, Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, looks like the committee got a little bit of an upgrade for a room this morning, so that's good that we're all here together. Thank you for allowing us to have a hearing. I really appreciate it. First, I would like to start off with saying this is not about politics, but this is about our children and keeping them safe. And I believe that this is a solution that will help do that. We already can arm school staff, which is why this bill isn't in federal and state affairs, I believe. This bill seeks to fix the insurance portions so that it doesn't cost a boatload of money for school districts who want to implement this policy. This policy might not work for some of your school districts. The individuals who come from large metropolitan areas can afford to have an SRO versus some of the other members in this committee that come from rural communities and they cannot afford to have an SRO on staff. And law enforcement help could be anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes away. And that could be a serious and grave danger to the population inside of the school. Why would we not at least allow the school boards to make this decision for their employees? There are two major amendments that will change this bill that I would like to suggest that the committee add. The first is removing the negligence presumption portion. I want this bill to be the best it can be and go into effect as soon as possible in order to protect our kids. The second item that needs to be amended due to an error in the drafting of the language is the actuarial principles language. That language needs to just concern the rates and not whether an insurance company can say that they do not wish to provide a service, because they should be able to determine whatever their company does want to do or doesn't want to do. If they don't want to provide a service, they don't have to. And so that was an error in the drafting of the original language. Yesterday I saw a quote in a newspaper from the Kansas Association of School Boards, and the lobbyist for that group said, and I quote, "Our question is, who should make this difficult decision?" My response to that member, who is the lobbyist for that organization, is that the members of their organization should be the ones to make that organization, or to make that policy change or not. It is their members who make up that organization, and it should be left up to the local school boards to make that kind of policy decision. We are fortunate here in the state of Kansas so far to not have had very many school shootings or tragedies. This conversation needs to happen now before any of those tragedies can occur. It is not if our kids will be killed, it is when will they be killed, and what are we doing to prevent it. The decision to carry a firearm is not mandatory and should only be carried by someone who is willing to engage in an active shooter. And there's plenty of training along with this bill to make sure that they will have the skill set in order to do so. This part of the legislation allowing people to volunteer reminds me of the movie American Sniper, when the dad tells his son, who is Chris Kyle, at the dinner table, and I quote, "There are three types of people in this world: sheep, wolves, and sheepdogs. Some people prefer to believe that evil doesn't exist in the world, and if it ever darkened their doorstep, they would not know how to protect themselves. Those are the sheep. Then you've got the predators, who use violence to prey on the weak. They're the wolves. And then there are those blessed with the gift of aggression and overpowering need to protect the flock. These men are a rare breed who will live to confront the wolf. They are the sheepdogs." And I think that individuals inside of our school district, there are sheepdogs who are willing to protect the kids. And I think that we need to be able to give them the best chance in order to do so. We need to take steps now to at least allow school boards to make this important decision, and I will stand for questions at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Ty Masterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Actually, since there's so many concrete, I'd have to like go to the heart of the politics of it all. And this is the issue we have. We can't have an open conversation about facts because we politicize things to a degree that makes it impossible. I got sent a link to a news story last night. I watched it on 41. I couldn't believe the misinformation that's being put out to the general public. This bill does not militarize our teachers. That petition that's going around is just wrong. Look at the list on that thing. Militarizes teachers, forces them to carry guns in classroom with emotionally disturbed special ed kids. I mean, it's just wrong. Well, the problem is 98% of mass public shootings in this country between 50 and 1950, happen in gun-free zones. We make our kids soft targets. That's what this bill's about. It would be okay if nobody in a school carried a gun, but people believed they were there. We have the worst part. People believe they're not there. Right? And nobody knows that. Actually, it's current law that they're allowed. There are districts that can allow it, and you don't know that they don't. But it's widely believed and spread. The banner on the news story was, this bill allows teachers to conceal carry. That is not true. That's debating old law. This bill seeks to train teachers, create meaningful safety plans. Train teachers, create meaningful safety plans for our kids. Please focus on the actual bill, not the media circus. This is about our children. The insurance piece, and why it's in this committee, is because there are those with leverage, politics, over the facts. Look at the actuarial data. If there is, I think you could contend that rates should be lower in the schools that protect their children more appropriately, that allow for this. They should be lower because they are now soft targets. Would you not want to move our schools from the 98% soft target to the 1.6% not soft target? Because these mentally deranged shooters are looking for soft targets. That's all this bill seeks to do, is harden our schools and protect our kids. And Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Jason Watkins. Kansas Rifle Association. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the Kansas State Rifle Association, thank you for the opportunity to testify in favor of House Bill 2789. The Kansas State Rifle Association appreciates this legislation because we see it as a common sense enhancement to a common sense law that helps protect our teachers and our school children. Provisions in the bill that allow for the arming of a teacher are already state law. This is not new law. That's misinformation. Provisions in the bill requiring a safety and security plan that is developed in conjunction with local law enforcement and not allowing a bad actor with deadly intentions to learn through the use of the Open Records Act the name and location of those teachers trained and certified to use a firearm in defense of children when that bad actor wants to plan an attack or sound public policies. We support those. There is a provision in the bill that is our understanding that the authors of the bill have agreed to amend, and that is the language that creates a presumption of negligence on a school district. The Kansas State Rifle Association would support that, as that is probably a bridge too far. Again, the provisions in this bill that deal with the arming of school teachers or district staff are already law, and that's in 75-7C10. The legislation before you today does not create a new law requiring school districts to allow teachers to conceal carry. What it does do is create a new level of training and certification that school boards may choose to require for teachers, where other district staff, should that district so choose to allow. I would highlight for the committee that allowing teachers to protect themselves and their students by carrying a concealed firearm is not a new concept. According to the Education Commission of the United States, Mr. Chairman, 10 states, including Kansas, currently allow for concealed carry of firearms by district staff based on policy decisions by their governing bodies. An additional 7 states have active legislation regarding the allowance pending before the end of this time. Florida Governor Rick Scott, within the last couple of weeks, just signed legislation allowing concealed carry by teachers. The state of Texas currently has 172 districts that allow for their teachers to carry concealed firearms. Their Department of Education has not cited a single problem since the policy went into effect. Various states around the country have allowed teachers and their district staff to carry concealed for quite some time, and without incident. These district leaders and teachers know that if and when an armed madman enters their school, seconds count. A trained, certified, armed teacher will save lives in those precious minutes before law enforcement arrives. One such district is the Sydney School District located in the state of Ohio, Mr. Chairman. Their sheriff approached their school superintendent with an equation. He said every 17 seconds after the first shot is fired and the first 911 call is made, somebody is hurt or dies. Even in the best scenario, we get here in 4 or 5 minutes. You do the math, end quote. The Sydney School District took a conservative approach to arming teachers that next year. Their superintendent described it as, quote, "We're buying time and it is of the essence." Nikki New is the mother of 3 children in the Sydney School District who feels safer dropping off her kids with armed teachers in the district. She says, God forbid if something happens, knowing that not only a law enforcement officer is there, but there are teachers in that building who can give my child a fighting chance is even more reassuring. Those are pretty powerful endorsements, Mr. Chairman. And with that, and in closing, the Kansas State Rifle Association believes that good and law-abiding people exercising their Second Amendment rights save lives. That includes the school buildings where our teachers teach and our students learn. That said, today's bill before you does not grant a school board the right to allow for concealed carry. That ability already exists in Kansas statute. Today's legislation simply allows for another certification by the Attorney General and another layer of training to be provided by law enforcement and licensed firearm instructors for teachers in districts where their school boards have decided to allow for concealed carry. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the time. I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Joseph Clay. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Ladies, gentlemen, my name is Joseph Clay, and I believe I'm uniquely qualified to deliver this address to the state legislature. I'm currently employed as a math teacher in HB-2789 Wichita Public Schools. I'm also the father of 4 amazing children, 2 of which are school age and will be joined by a 3rd next year. Beyond that, I am and will always be a sergeant in the United States Marine Corps and an Iraq War veteran. I served in the infantry during one of the bloodiest periods in the Iraq War, and I carry today the graves of the 16 brave men I fought alongside tattooed on my body as a memory of their sacrifice. And I speak of them because they fought for what they believe, and they died to ensure the safety of their loved ones at home. Their memory is the voice that carried me today here to the Capitol, because they paid the ultimate sacrifice to ensure that we can live in an America that is full of opportunity, and one that is without the violence that could be our doorstep in a moment's notice if we were to ever waver in our service. Today is not the danger of foreign enemies that terrify our citizen. It is the danger of violence wrought from within. Mass shootings, especially those carried out on school campuses, have become a plague of our society. I take it personally when the safety and sanctity of our schools are threatened. And I will not stand idly by and watch my 4 children attend school each day, knowing that I have done nothing to ensure their safe return home. For far too long, parents and teachers alike, we've relied upon school boards and lawmakers to decide what is right and what is wrong for our children while they are on campus. And there is not a day that goes by that some form of violence and coercion are plaguing our children where they should be safest, at school. Today's opportunity to mitigate the violence that could be awaiting our children tomorrow. House Bill 2789 is a step towards the peace of mind that our children will not fall in another school shooting. As a parent and as a teacher, I fully support the work done on behalf of this committee. I believe that our actions today are paramount in providing safe and secure education for all Kansas children. One thing is for sure, if given the opportunity, this Marine will be the first to stand at the ready in order to protect the lives of innocent children and mitigate the loss of life in case of an on-campus intruder. Whether the danger derived from another student or a crazed attacker who has only recognition to gain by their violent action, it is our duty to take every step necessary to prevent the loss of life in an emergency situation. For those who believe the threat of violence is not enough, I would invite them to visit the grave of thousands of young men and women who will never have the chance to graduate and become a valued member of our society. I would also invite them to determine the credibility of the threats preceding the hundreds of shootings that have happened across America in the last decade. Not only that, but I'd invite them to tell the parents of Southeast High School children in Wichita that on one of the 2 days where violent threats were made against our campus this year, that the threats were just that, a threat. Maybe the next time threats are made against our student population, the opposition can attend class with each one of the students who have the potential to become the next victims of violent outbursts. It is in duty and service to them that I stand in favor of the Safer Schools endorsement and its inclusion of concealed carry on campus by qualified teachers. Twice this year, I have opened my classroom to students who feared the unthinkable and sought me out as their best line of defense in an event that one of the threats had come to fruition. Twice this year, I have had the painfully vocal conversations with high school children about the potential reality of a school shooting occurring here in Kansas. Their voices reverberate through my being every day. And it is because of the love that I carry for each and every one of the children under my care that I seek to dispose this notion that concealed carry is not an answer. When in fact, I believe it to be the best option to prevent a horrific situation. The day will come when we're going to have to face this fear. If we stand idly by today and we vote against this bill, then it may be our actions that pack the graves of young Kansans in the future. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. It is my solemn duty to speak for my students, my community, and my family, and fellow teachers who are ready to undertake the grave responsibility of protecting our children in that event. I do not seek to carry a weapon with me to school each day as I teach our children about the value of education. I do sure as hell do not seek to brandish a weapon as some sort of superiority to my students or as some political statement. I seek to ensure that they have the opportunity to use that education to become the next generation to guide this country in relative peace they deserve to know. If that means I stand at the ready to defend them in case of a school shooting, then here I stand. It would be my honor and duty to help protect the children I profess to educate. I'm not alone. Many other teachers stand at my side, and each and every one of them would gladly be the last line of defense in the dire case of a campus shooting. It is with pride that I remind the Kitty Media of dozens of teachers who have died shielding children from the violent onslaught of bullets during the events that have led up to this discussion. Imagine if they had any other option available to them. Today, you will vote to give educators in Kansas an option to stand ready to defend and not just die for your children. That is the grave reality of your vote. I pray that you choose your actions wisely. My words are spoken from a place of concern. I have intimate knowledge of what it is like to face down an aggressor that will only accept death as a result. It is for that reason that I would be wrought with guilt if I did not take this moment to remind you that the issue of concealed carry teachers on campus is not a gun issue, it's a safety issue. Our children are not safe on campus here in Kansas. If you do nothing today but vote based on your belief or some political notion for re-election, then you have failed yourself and you have failed the people of Kansas. Hear their voice when I speak, because I do not speak alone. Make a vote to ensure the safety of my children and other children like them. Landon's 11. He loves math. He wants to be a video game designer when he grows up. Leland's 6. He loves martial arts and just learned to ride his bike over spring break. Dalton is 3. He has a temper like his daddy, but excited to be in school next year. In fact, the interview for pre-K, I think, is the only time he ever used his manners. And my little girl, Delilah, she's only 16 months old, but as beautiful as her mother, and as unique as they come. Their lives are in your hands. Their safety is the only concern I care about. Thousands of children await your voice. Do not let them down. Thank you. I will refrain for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Joseph. Ken Gorman.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name is Ken Gromit. My background training experience is why I was asked to be here. I graduated from high school and went into the United States Marine Corps right out of high school. Out of the Marine Corps, I went to work for Wichita Public Schools in their security division. And from there, I was hired by the Derby Police Department and spent 25 years there until I retired. My background is training officers, training citizens. I currently own Range 54 in Wichita, Kansas. And I was asked to speak about this because I think that what we're doing now is not enough. As we look at across the nation what's being done to protect our kids in schools, it's not working. SROs in schools has not worked. Locks, barriers, systems like that, if you look at Sandy Hook, that did not work either. The perpetrator there was able to bypass that. Currently in Kansas, we do a better job of guarding dirt than we do guarding our kids. If you go to any baseball stadium, football field around the state, what you see is fencing. And during times that there are being used, that they have manned gates where people can come and go through, and it's limited access. So I don't know why we say that we don't want to allow teachers to be armed or staff members to be armed if that is another layer of security. I currently work with a couple of private schools in the Wichita area that have already decided that this is something that they want to do. They want to harm themselves so that they can stand against that possible intruder. We haven't had an incident in Kansas for a while, but it doesn't stop it from happening today or tomorrow. Nobody in here is exempt from bad things happening to them, and today could be that day. And I don't know why we would want to take one tool away from a district. Again, it's not an end-all be-all cure-all. It's just another way, a layer of security. And in this building, you have layers of security. Why don't we offer layers of security for our schools as well? Again, I will stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Ken. Is there anyone else who'd like to testify as a proponent? Our committee, we do have written testimony. And at this time, I would open it up for questions. Representative Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Masterson? Senator Masterson, thank you for being here and thank you for your testimony today. As you probably remember from yesterday, my major concern is not about the law itself, because that's pretty much settled law. My concern is making sure that the insurance portion is right. And my big concern is that many of our carriers that provide insurance for our school districts are regional carriers. They're not nationwide carriers. They may not have experience on the coast where a lot of things happen. We're kind of insulated in a lot of ways in the Midwest, and quite frankly, we're lucky to be here and experience some of the safety that we get just by being here. However, these carriers can have a problem in understanding the risk, especially if they're not used to that risk. And my question to you is, would it be possible in this amendment to make it to where instead of requiring some of the things required from the insurance carriers, allow an insurance carrier that may have the ability to evaluate that risk and appropriately rate the risk to have a rider type situation instead of the carrier having to take that risk? They could exclude the risk and then allow a carrier that's really good at it to come in and take care of that risk. I think that's more of a proper way to do it. Is that what what you're contemplating in the amendment that was proposed by Representative Carpenter?
Thank you, Representative Hawkins, for the question and answer. And that's why we do the committee process, right? We want to evaluate those aspects. I'm okay with whichever would provide the right scenario. What you're trying to prevent is a company not using politics instead of data, right? To make an assumption that because if you do this, we will not do that. You want sound actuarial data, like you do for every other risk in an insurance company, right? I raise my rate because my risk is higher or lower, and if you go to that data, I mean, you can actually find a reason to lower it. Absolutely fine. If you have an underlying carrier and a rider, there are many districts, as was in the testimony from Mr. Watkins, that 172 districts do this in Texas alone, and they're not having trouble with liability insurance in their buildings. What you're trying to prevent is a company pushing their own politics over the policy. So if there's a way to word that and where the risk is covered, you're trying to incent that. I mean, and I'm okay with the amendments. The presumptive negligence, I think, was also distorted in the public. That just says that if I've not done anything else to protect my kids, the presumption is that it doesn't mean you are negligent. It just means that when you go to the court, you have to show that I've taken these other safety measures, but we're willing to have that come out. Whatever that language needs to be to remove the disincentive, if you will, for that to happen from an insurance perspective.
I will work with you on that, and we'll come up with a good plan on the section 6 of this bill. Thanks, Senator Masters.
Thank you.
Representative Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a quick question for Mr. Grauman.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here. You mentioned in your testimony that having school resource officers hasn't deterred these shootings or hasn't stopped them. If a qualified trained police officer with a gun is not a deterrent, why is a history teacher with a gun?
They're there. The teachers are there every day. You know, if you look at the history of school shootings, it appears that they've pre-planned. At Columbine, they built bombs before they went in. Columbine had an SRO. You know, a teacher is there, and if that teacher is voluntary, nobody's saying you have to do this. It's voluntary. If a teacher says, "Hey, look, I want to have the ability to protect my students," then why shouldn't they? You know, the FBI says it takes 14 minutes on the average for law enforcement to arrive. The Florida shooting was only 8 minutes long.
But if I may, a school resource officer is there. Their job is to be there and to be armed. And in the event of a shooting, they don't have to take a classroom full of students to safety. They are there as an armed trained officer. If that's not effective, why does me or any other teacher with a gun who has 30 students to worry about more effective as a deterrent?
Not every school district has SROs.
I'm not contesting that, but in your testimony, you said that a school resource officer isn't sufficient to...
That hasn't been. If you look at Florida, they have a school resource officer there, and it didn't work.
I'm not disputing that point. I guess I'm asking why is it qualitatively different if a high school teacher has a gun instead of a school resource officer?
Again, because I believe that teachers are there every day. I believe that a teacher that volunteers and has the training to be able to defend their kids, like the gentleman that spoke before me, why not allow him, if he's so willing, to defend his classroom if he so chose?
Thank you. I imagine we'll hear several reasons why not in the next 30 minutes.
That would be fine. Thank you.
If I may. I'm sorry, I know it's, I would like to field that question. I work on a campus that's almost a quarter mile long. Southeast High School is one of the most brand new schools in Wichita. One SRO in that building. There's no way they're getting in my classroom. My classroom's on the end. It's on a wing. It's all the way down by the office. That's almost 1/8 of a mile away from my classroom. Not only that, but my security guards are armed with batons and mace. What are you expecting to do? Throw a can of mace at the gunman? My students deserve to be defended in the case that a shooter comes on campus. You cannot expect one SRO that may be minutes away fighting a pile of 2,200 students on my campus to get to that classroom while they try to escape. How do you expect that to work? The reality just doesn't exist. You're not planning for an attack. You're not. Preparation is not in place for us to defend our students on campus. They're not safe right now. Thank you.
Representative Neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple questions for a couple of you. Mr. Clay, Joseph, would you come back?
Yeah, he's coming.
Mr. Clay, Joseph. And- Thank you. You were in the military, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, when you were trained, there are a couple of rules when you're a military personnel. You're not allowed to carry your weapons on grounds, is that correct? When you're on base, you are not allowed to carry guns.
Our weapons are kept in an armory, however, at any moment's notice, that armory can be opened up and weapons can be released in case of an event. At the same time, concealed carry allows us to keep, or concealed carry is not keeping an armed weapon on us. It is keeping ammunition away from, ammunition and the weapon separate.
Okay, thank you. Also, there's been studies done that a handgun up against an AR-15 or a rifle is not compatible.
That's not true.
That's
In the
if
hands
you're
of-
shooting long distance down the hall, it is.
In the hands of a trained professional, that mitigates the distance.
Okay. And when you're in the military, you also go through mental training as far as being able to handle the gun, the time that you spend on a range, and preparing. So if you have to shoot someone, you have that psychological training.
Absolutely.
I don't see that here.
I don't see kids dying in front of us either today.
I'm
But in
sorry, I
that
didn't
case,
hear you.
in that event, we have a choice, right? We have a choice to take the lives of others in our hands and
If
to
we are
save
not
lives.
mentally prepared to do that, I think that could be a negative. So thank you very much.
No, that's why this is a volunteer basis. That's why the teachers reach out and ask for the permission. That's why we have to go through stringent requirements through the school board to get a concealed carry on campus, right? We prove that we have that mentality available to us. No one else is going to defend our kids. My child spends half his childhood on a school campus where he's a target. No one is defending my child.
I think our teachers are trying to do that
We are.
with safety plans other than.
Safety plans. Safety plans are breaking the
I
window and
would like
getting
now
out.
to
Running is
speak
not a
with
plan.
Senator Matthews.
Thank you.
Thank you. In your research on this bill, when you look at liability insurance, how much is out there in the state available?
How much insurance is available?
Liability insurance.
Number of carriers and those types of things?
What types of?
Numbers of carriers, or how much of the total liability is by dollar wise?
No, not the dollar. How many companies are out there willing to provide liability insurance to schools?
The exact number, I don't have it.
Two.
Right, fair.
Last time, because I was president of
You're
Kansas
talking
Station.
currently, right?
Yeah.
So you're not-
And so it's very limited, and they can deny wanting to do this. So, you know, I think of that also as a piece of this bill, that there really isn't the availability for those who will provide the insurance. So I think that's something that we have to take a serious look at, and I thank you.
Representing neighbor, I think that's a false assumption that, so it's limited, yes, maybe you have two choices, but you have districts in other states that are covered, that have this, so you're not, it's a business, insurance is a business, it is there to make money. And if you have a client, you will find a carrier, and it's about safety of the children, not about insurance companies.
I would say that Texas is more prone to carrying guns than Kansas is.
Colorado has it, Utah has it.
Some
There's
of them
others that are off the top
have
of my
different
head.
gun laws, and different states have companies that have insurance. But in this case, I can tell you over the years, having been on the school board, there were 2 liability companies out there for the entire state. That is very limited. We are not Texas.
But we also
Thank
have a
you.
culture that creates soft targets. The culture of Kansas creates soft targets, and that is where the risk lies.
That's what we need to change.
Representative Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Proponent?
Grumman?
Sorry. Mr. Drummond? Yes, thank you again for being here, and again, I applaud your service, as well as Mr. Clay's in the Marines. You're a certified firearms instructor, and I'm just thinking of when you look at a group of teachers that whatever responsibility they have within a building, and you bring them in for training, and you think about taking them away from their routine and teaching all the things that they have to do within that classroom, and then in a spur of the moment, then they're put in a position to react and find that firearm. What would be your opinion if you had a group of, say, 10 teachers that were wanting to look for the safer designation? How many of those would you pass?
All of them if they met the qualifications. I mean, as we go through this and we develop a standard, I wouldn't look at them any different than I look at a brand new police officer. You know, a brand new police officer that has very little or no experience. They need that basic training. We would provide that training for them, or someone in the state would provide that training for them, bring them up to where they could be very proficient with the firearm. You know, again, these teachers, what we're asking is for them to volunteer. We're not saying every teacher in the school needs to carry a gun. We're not arming everybody. We're just wanting those volunteers. And you know, we have a lot of veterans like Mr. Clay. We have a lot of people that are involved in the shooting sports like USPSA and IDPA that already have those skills. They're better than I am, you know, and they're willing to put their life on the line for their children. But because of insurance or some other reason, we're deciding, no, we just don't want that other layer of security. And I think it's a great way to reduce time because teachers are there already.
Mr. Chairman, I follow up.
One.
Thank you. Well, I guess my point would be if you have a police recruit, they have gone through an application process where they have met other criteria that a teacher necessarily wouldn't have when they're hired to teach 7th grade math, for example. So I don't see the connection in the background you have with the teacher being the same as the background of the police recruit as far as trainability. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
If you wish to respond.
I have no response.
We have 5 more questions, and we're going to go to the opponents. Representative Hodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for the gentleman that served in the forces and was also a teacher in 2009. I want to go back to kind of the image that I heard you talk about, the pile of students. You remember when you said that between you and possibly a shooter on the other side. Looking through that lens, I also want to look at 2009, the Fort Hood massacre, where we had 13 people killed and up to 30 wounded. You're on a military base, lots of trained people, lots of weapons. How did that happen?
I can't speak for Fort Hood. I served in Camp Pendleton.
Well, my point is, you're trying to say that you want trained people with weapons peppered throughout a school, and that's going to fix it.
Nothing's going to fix it.
Well, or help solve things. And what I'm trying to say is that looks like it has been tried at Fort Hood with everyone's a soldier there. There is all kinds of opportunity to get a weapon to defend yourself. Yet we had that many people massacred there. So how does your solution work when we've already seen what happened on Fort Hood in 2009?
Representative
It's hard to speak, excuse me, I do want to apologize to the representative that I've talked to before, because I feel like I'm getting a little aggressive to you guys. The loss of life is not something that we can take lightly. Fort Hood was a military base. Those are grown adults. Those are adults who put their lives on the line, raised their hand to defend the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. Our kids haven't made that promise. They've done nothing to get on a bus, go to school, and try to learn and become good citizens. It is our job to do more than just educate them. It is our job to defend and protect them despite any circumstance given to us. Massacres are going to happen. The question is, can we stop the loss of life? Do we get to give life to the next doctor, to the next lawmaker, to the next teacher? Do we get to stop those deaths from happening? That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to get a perfect solution. There is no perfect solution. People are going to die. If a massacre happens, they're going to die. We have to stop it in its tracks. I, for one, am going to get the students out because we've been asked to make a plan. We've had 2 school threats this year. We've been asked to think about our classrooms and think about our environment and what we would do in that situation. My job, first and foremost, is to get the students out of my classroom and get them to safety. After that, I'm taking things into my hands. I have been trained. Whether you allow me to conceal carry or not, I'm still going towards that gunman. The Marine in me is rushing towards the firefight.
Pardon me, sir. Like there's been a statement here that's incorrect. The former representative that spoke on Fort Hood. Fort Hood is probably representative of our schools, where it is a gun-free zone. So that's why there were so many individuals that were casualties. Fort Hood is a gun-free zone.
So are schools, Representative.
That's the point.
Next question, Representative Cox.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Mr. Watkins. Thank you for being here. I think this room is full of people that are all trying to solve the same problem, but with different approaches and methods. So I appreciate everyone on both sides being willing here to have this dialogue and this debate. My question is kind of twofold. One, do you know how many school shootings have happened in Kansas? And the second part of it is, I guess, addressing the concern that if we've had few to none, that if this policy was adopted widespread, and even though responsible gun owners, there's still instances of accidents happening, misfires, things like that happen, do we actually create an increased risk in our schools of having one of those misfires at a significantly higher percentage than we do of actually having a school shooting and preventing it? Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I went to Goddard Elementary School and then transferred to Valley Center. Not too long after I transferred to Valley Center, there was a school shooting at Goddard. I believe the principal lost his life in that shooting. This is going back to the early 1980s. That's the last school shooting in Wichita or in Kansas that I'm aware of. In terms of do you increase the opportunity for mishaps with firearms when more firearms are around? Would not be an honest statement to say no. Of course, opportunities for mishaps are going to increase, just like opportunities for auto accidents increase, the more cars that are on the road. There's no getting around that. I will say, though, that, as I said in my testimony, this is not a new concept. There are 10 states that allow teachers to conceal carry. There's 172 in the state of Texas that we know of. No incidents. An incident that I was able to find was within the last couple of weeks. It was in California. A teacher was in his classroom in a district that does not allow teachers to carry concealed or bring weapons to school. And for whatever reason, this teacher was showing the students how to clean a firearm. I do not know why. And that firearm went off and it ricocheted and 3 students were injured. The reason that that teacher had a firearm in that school is because he was a trained law enforcement officer. So the incident that I could find was not a teacher that was concealed and carrying, it was a trained law enforcement officer. So we are not able to point to any incidents with teachers that conceal and carry that we know of since 2007.
Representative Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. There's just been a couple of comments about gun-free zones or soft targets, and in the interest of working in facts rather than politics, I just point out that a study among the 133 mass shootings from January 2009 to July 2015, 70% of mass shootings took place in private homes, 13% in gun-free zones, and 17% in public areas where carrying of firearms is allowed. Thank you.
Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is for you also, Mr. Watkins. I'm just hopefully you're kind of concerned that personally I feel like these bills are rushed. But the main reason is that I think a lot of people are really concerned. I'm really concerned about unintended consequences. And I was wondering, with your experience in working for the
Rifle Association?
Has there been any dialogue with different school boards or educators? Because we're getting bombarded with many emails. People are opposing this, if they're afraid, the teachers are talking about quitting. So, to me, Kansas right now already has a shortage of teachers. They're not paid enough. It seems like they did do this, seems like they'll get an increase in pay. But it seems also that we may possibly lose teachers with the implementation of this type of law. So, from your experience, have you seen any unintended consequences where you're going to lose teachers, or is it going to be a mass exodus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been law in Kansas since 2013. I'm not aware of any teachers that have left the employ of the school district in the state of Kansas during the time that this has been law. In fact, if there are teachers that are concerned about this, I think there are provisions in this bill that would actually make them feel better. Because there are provisions in this bill which increase the training and the certification process for a teacher that is going to carry in a district where that has been allowed. There are other provisions in the bill that have school districts work on a safety plan with local law enforcement. So that gets a little bit to your suggestion of, are there conversations taking place? But to conclude my answer, there needs to be more of those conversations. I think all of us need to sit down and have level-headed discussions and try to remove the emotion from what is clearly a very emotional issue.
I believe that's our last question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jason.